Can we have some truth in journalism? I'm Brian Lilley with TheRebel.media. It's funny to me what passes for journalism these days, especially over at, say, CBC. Here at The Rebel, and before that at Sun News, myself, Ezra Levant, and others, well, we've been accused of being biased. Okay, I'll say I'm guilty as charged, but unlike most media outlets, most people in the media, like, say, everyone over at CBC, I'm upfront with my bias. I tell you where I'm coming from. You can take what I say or ignore it, knowing that I'm coming to you from a specific viewpoint. Then you have the others, the folks that claim to be impartial and unbiased and then produce work that brings that notion into question. This past weekend, CBC put out a story, it ran across their entire network, is by their access to information specialist Dean Beebe, and it's either a really lazy piece of journalism or an agenda-driven piece aimed at pushing an issue. In my opinion this story falls into the latter category. Now this isn't just another rant on the media and media bias. I've talked about that plenty. I've even written a whole book called CBC Exposed that laid bare so much of what is wrong with the state broadcaster. So I'm not just going to bash the other media outlets here. I keep saying that elections matter. We need to talk about policy. So let's do that as I show you how bad this story, ostensibly about pensions, really is, because it is horrible. Let's start with the headline and the subheadline. Document raises questions about Harper retirement policies. And then the subheadline. Finance Canada review of Canada's retirement system says Canada scores poorly among OECD countries. Did the document raise questions? No. No, it didn't. Dean Beebe did. The document was there to answer questions. Did the review say Canada scores poorly? No, it didn't. Dean Beebe said that based on one aspect, what the review calls one pillar of retirement savings in Canada, public pensions. Now, after the loaded headline, which I will admit journalists don't always get a say in, Beebe opens his piece this way. Canada scores poorly among developed countries in providing public pensions to seniors according to an internal analysis of retirement income by the federal government. He keeps going back to this one feature time and again, the public pension feature. It's part of what makes me think that this story tells you more about Dean Beebe and his worldview than it does about, well, retirement income, which is what the report is about. Because when you read the full report, the full access to information documents that he had and that I now have, it shows that retirement income in Canada is doing much better than reported, and the Canadian seniors are less likely to live in poverty than seniors in most OECD countries, including ones that spend more on public pensions. Beebe and CBC don't tell you that. It wouldn't fit their agenda. Here's what they do tell you. After setting up that pensions are an election issue comes this quote from the review conducted by Finance Canada for the Privy Council office. In 2010, Canada spent 5% of GDP on public pensions, which is low compared to the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, of average of 9.4%. The OECD projects that public expenditure on pensions in Canada will only increase to 6.3% of GDP by 2050, much lower than the 11.6% of GDP projected for OECD countries on average. Well, that's all accurate. It's all in the report. As he continues on in the article, Beebe cherry picks lines that show Canada spending less than OECD average on public pensions, on social programs, and then he turns to Ontario Liberal MP and Kathleen Wynne, Cabinet Minister in charge of Ontario's pension, Mitzi Hunter, who unloads on Stephen Harper and the Conservatives, claims they're burying their heads in the sand. Then he turns to another public pension advocate, Susan Ang of CARP. This story was an agenda-driven piece from the start, and all these facts prove it. But what gives added proof is what wasn't included in the story. Like I said, you listen to Dean Beebe and CBC, and you would think that Granny is left on her own or at best put out on an ice floe by the uncaring federal government. What's the reality? It's far different. Page 6 of the report, on the PDF anyway, it shows that the number of seniors living below the low income cutoff, the LICO, commonly referred to as the poverty line, it's been shrinking since 1976. The report shows that when you take all three pillars of the retirement system in this country, meaning OAS and GIS, that's called the first pillar. The second pillar is the Canada Pension Plan or Quebec Pension Plan, and the third being private savings such as RRSPs, then Canadian seniors are getting an income replacement above the OECD average. Quote, with support from all three pillars, the median Canadian senior earns about 91% as much as the median Canadian, well above the OECD average of 84%. Is that in the story? No. It wouldn't push the CBC agenda of more government spending. Now, are there seniors in poverty? Yes. But there are seniors in Canada. Well, seniors in Canada in general are less likely to live below the poverty line than the general population. The poverty rate is 9%. Poverty rate for seniors, 7.2%, according to an IRPP study. Well, by the way, that's well below the OECD average of 12.8% for seniors living in poverty. You didn't see that in Dean Beebe's story, did you? Yet this story was given time on the National. It played on CBC radio across the country and on CBC's news channel. And it raised a false story. It was built upon a selective reading of a report. This story is guilty of the sin of omission. But like most stories at CBC, it did the main job it was intended to do. It helped convince the audience that Stephen Harper is mean and needs to be defeated. CBC, its news department, its editors, their management, they should all be ashamed of themselves over this. If you agree with that idea, you can help them. You can email CBC's ombudsman and tell them the problem with this story. Tell them that for $1 billion per year of taxpayer money, $1 billion per year of taxpayers' money, you deserve the truth. It's simple. Ombudsman@cbc.ca is the address, and the ombudsman is Esther Enkin. Be polite, be concise, and tell them you expect better. This is an election that's going on. Policy matters, reporting matters, but so does the truth.